Alright folks, so obviously we've had some more moves take place in the North American scene. I've already kind of done a video talking about Simphis joining Nihilum and kind of what I thought about that move, and I've also talked about some of the other stuff that's been going on in the NA scene as well lately. But obviously we've had some other moves take place since last night, and even up until like just a few minutes before I started recording this, another thing happened. So let's talk about all of them real quick, kind of talk about what I think really fast, and then kind of go from there, because I assume there's going to be some more moves made after I record this video maybe, and so this might become obsolete real quick, but let's try to jump straight into it. So basically the biggest move obviously is of course Skadoodle and freakazoid being officially signed to Cloud9, as well as Swag being signed as some type of analyst or something like that. Now, I've already done a pretty big discussion, not big discussion, but when I did my video about Cloud9 dropping Simphis and Shazam, I had already kind of talked about freakazoid because it was already like pretty well known that he was joining C9 because he leaked some emails on stream, and so I kind of already touched on freakazoid a good bit if you want to hear my like synopsis or an analysis of freakazoid joining the team. But just real quick, I think it's a huge gamble for Cloud9 if I'm 100% honest. I mean, I've never seen him play on like a structured team in CSGO period, except for when he played with Dynamic like a long time ago. That was like late 2012, early 2013. He played on that team for a very short amount of time, like when Dynamic first transitioned from Source to CSGO, and they were competing against like Area 51 to qualify for, I believe it was ESWC 2013 or something like that. And he didn't last on that team for very long. That experiment kind of failed, but I don't know if it was freakazoid to blame or the roles that Dynamic tried to put him in maybe was to blame. They seemed to kind of just plug him into like Volcano's roles, and that just seemed maybe kind of a fault of theirs rather than freakazoid. We've obviously seen him play at a couple of ESEA lands with a couple of pugs, groups of friends, when he played with Frost Gaming one particular time where he was playing with Mo and Clown and Easy PK and some guys, and he also traveled the land once with Steel and Mossbeck and Frost and some other guys as well. And individually he actually played, you know, pretty well, and I think on land he's actually a pretty like solid player individually, like fragging wise and skill wise. He can honestly join this team as an entry fragger for sure. There's no question about that. So he can kind of, you know, really play that entry fragger role really well, which might free up like situations where now Shroud will no longer have to worry about being the first guy into a site. He can be kind of that second or third guy in. As far as what they're going to do with lurking, I don't really know how that's going to quite work out. We'll see what happens. So that's basically kind of the summary of freakazoid joining the team. I think it's a big risk, but he could be a big entry fragger for the team. As far as him like being a direct replacement for Simphis, basically, I don't think he adds anything to the team like skill-wise or fragging-wise that Simphis couldn't have done as far as being an entry fragger or something like that. But I think it does free up the ability for Sean Garrett to be the clear-cut leader for this team, not have to worry about his calls being overruled by Simphis or having conflicting reads come across his own. Now he's the clear-cut leader for the team. There should be no more confusion on, you know, who's leading the team, you know, who's calling the shots. It should be very clear that it's Sean nowadays. You know, all those examples from Katowice where we looked at the POV streams and we saw Simphis like calling strats on Inferno against Virtus Pro, and Sean had good reads about the B-bomb site and how he could expose Neo playing alone, and he got called off of that for 5 or 6 rounds in a row, and then eventually he did attack into it and they finally won a round, but it was like way too late to finally go with his gut call. That should no longer be a problem. Yeah, Nothing will chime in occasionally for sure and make suggestions and things like that, but I think that now Sean can really kind of impose his will on this team without any conflicts or any you know, debate about how things should be run, and that's either going to be really good. It's either going to like allow Sean to really go with his gut reads, which are usually pretty good, and be successful as an in-game lead, or it could be an issue because there were situations where Sean Garrett's like structured, more rigid play didn't quite work. You know, I think Simphis in an interview with Thorin on that Counterpoints episode talked about how in practice and preparation for Katowice, the strats and things that Sean had designed were kind of struggling in scrims, so they switched to more of like a scrimmy style, like especially against TSM on Overpass in group play on their executions on Overpass, and their execution actually worked on T-Side with that scrimmy style. They just couldn't hold post plants. So it's one of those things where like Simphis could kind of help Sean out when his like more structured playbook wasn't working really well, you could kind of bring in the scrimmy, like out of nowhere stuff that might help, you know, push Cloud9 ahead. But at the same time, it's not as if Sean's so structured that he can't, you know, be a bit, can't like, you know, bend things around a little bit. I mean, he focuses more on understanding how to play each scenario and practicing each scenario for each map, rather than just having a set strat he calls at the pre-round and, you know, runs that through no matter what. I mean, he can still make reads and make adjustments based on different scenarios, and they kind of practice that. Like, in this scenario, we do this, you know, that if-then kind of chain. So, again, I talked a bit more than I wanted to on that. But that's kind of my deal. The pros of freakazoid joining is it allows Sean to be the clear leader, and freakazoid may develop into being a really powerful entry fragger on LAN. So we'll just have to see if that happens or not. Kind of a gamble, but he could be big for them. And I think it frees up Sean to lead. As far as Skadoodle joining the team goes, let's talk about how this happened first of all, right? So this is pretty much all public information, so I don't feel like I'm dropping any spoilers or giving you inside information you shouldn't have. But basically, here's the deal. Like, Hiko and Skadoodle were supposed to be a package deal, right? And what was supposed to happen was, this is even based on like a Ghost2 Gamers article that just got released today, and I think some stuff that Hiko said on his stream, that it was like originally kind of supposed to be some Liquid guys joining Hiko and Skadoodle, and I kind of hinted at this a few times that this was possible, and it would have been Adren as an in-game leader, Skadoodle as an opper, Hiko playing whatever role he wanted, maybe that classic lurker role, but maybe something else. Then they would have Nitro as like kind of an entry fragger and Fugly as a support player, and that was what the 5 was going to be. Well, apparently there was an impasse. People like Adren didn't want to leave Liquid. They felt their salaries were fair at Liquid, and the salaries were going to be the same whether or not they stay with Liquid or whether or not they went with Hiko's organization, which I won't name because that's not public information. Hiko did not want to budge from his organization that he had backing him and the team that he was going to build. He didn't want to join Liquid. He wanted to stay with the org that he had backing him, and so there was like this impasse between like Hiko and Skadoodle joining Liquid and staying underneath the Liquid banner, or Adren, Fugly, and Nitro leaving Liquid and joining like Hiko's organization. And that impasse apparently could not be solved. Like, neither wanted to budge. Apparently signing bonuses were offered from Hiko's org to try to pull players off Liquid. Liquid countered with their own stuff. Like, there was like a bidding war basically, and there was an impasse was met. So when Liquid realized that Hiko wasn't going to budge from his org, they tried to just get Skadoodle. And Liquid, I think, offered Skadoodle some type of signing bonus. They were just going to replace a Liege with replace Daps with Skadoodle, keep a Liege, and try to work a roster like that, where Adren still becomes the in-game leader in place of Daps. Daps is just gone. They keep a Liege as an entry fragger with Nitro. They have Fugly for support. They have Skadoodle opping. That team could have been really good too. But from what I understand, it just really boiled down to the fact that A, Cloud9 offered a better signing bonus and maybe a better salary too. I don't know. And I think maybe Skadoodle just felt that Cloud9, he had a better chance to win with that team with the kind of structure that they had, maybe. Rather than going with like some young, inexperienced talent on Liquid, he could go with the more experienced crowd, the more established crowd over at Cloud9. So I think it was a combination of like better deal, and he felt a better chance to win, maybe. So he decides to go with like Cloud9. And so that basically bust Hiko, because now he lost his partner, Skadoodle, that he was building a team with, and he had, you know, refused to join Liquid and stay with his org, and that pretty much killed his thing, and so now he's a free agent, right? So I guess you could kind of blame everyone a little bit for this, because you could blame some of the Liquid players for not wanting to budge, but you can also understand why they didn't want to leave Liquid, because they liked that org, and they felt bad about leaving it so soon, and they felt that their contracts were fair at Liquid, I guess, and yada, yada, yada. You can also understand why Hiko doesn't want to budge from his org. It's an org he's been in communications with. I think that the org that he was in communications with was probably partnered with companies he works for. And so there's that. He doesn't want to budge from what he's been working with and crafting and wheeling and dealing with. Especially since the signing bonuses that his org were going to offer some players was pretty substantial. You can understand both sides of the story, basically, but it just didn't pan out, and then Skadoodle got a really sick offer from Cloud9, and that pretty much killed everything. And that basically kind of leaves Hiko in a situation where if he wants to play right here and now, he can't be picky. He just has to jump on a team. And he could jump on CLG, because they just announced they released Peter, so he could join that team and then you have like maybe Tarek become an opper full time, or Cutler go back to opping or something, or maybe you just like drop another player from CLG, pick up Hiko, and then pick up an opper. I don't know what they do, but that's an option. Him joining up with the Elevate guys like Roka and Desi and some of those guys, that's probably a possibility for him as well if he wants to compete here and now. I think Hiko even stated in the Ghost 2 Gamers article interview he did that he can't afford to be picky anymore, and that's true. You know, he was too picky, and now he's out of a team because of it, and so now he can't really afford to do so. And now all of a sudden he's open to go back to Cloud9 if the offer's right. So, and that's not going to happen, I don't think, now that, unless things don't work out with freakazoid or something. But yeah, I just don't see it. I think he just has to kind of suck it up and maybe play for a team that's not going to instantly compete like he wanted, and is going to take some time to grow, if at all grow. So there you have that. So we've kind of approached that angle. So now that Skadoodle is on Cloud9, let's just analyze it from there. Yes, this dude's definitely an upgrade to Shazam as far as an opper role goes. Better decision maker, all around just more skilled. Also a pretty skilled rifler. He can do so much for this team. He's definitely the best option for Cloud9 when it comes to an opper. Skadoodle's the best opper in NA, and Cloud9 landed him. So good job. There's not much more to analyze past that. I mean, good pickup. Skadoodle, clearly the best opper available. Props to Cloud9 for winning the bid war and getting Sky on the roster. So let's see. I talked about freakazoid, talked about the whole thing with that Simphis, talked about the super team, yada yada yada. Okay, so that just basically leaves Swag, the analyst. This makes no sense in reality. I mean, the guy's never been an in-game leader. Yes, he's a smart player, was a very good player, but never has really been like an in-game leader or an analyst, in my opinion. I mean, even when he was playing on these teams, yeah, he would communicate and have some slight input, but it's not like he was one of the voices on the team making a lot of decisions, you know, back in Complexity and back in some of these other teams. In fact, he was called on for being too quiet sometimes by some of his like former teammates and whatever. But so that's kind of weird. I think, like, here's the deal. If Cloud9 wants a coach, which has been mentioned in interviews by Sean Gares, I think, with, like, ESL or HLTV, he mentioned maybe they need to bring on a coach, then bring on a coach. Like, Swag is not coaching material, in my opinion. He's a great player. He's a smart player, but he's not a coach or an analyst or whatever it is that you think he should be. So if you want a coach, you want someone to help you, then bring on someone who can actually help you as a coach, and I don't think Swag is it. But let's talk about why they probably brought Swag on as an analyst. I think a lot of people have read between the lines here already that they signed him to a pretty long contract because they foresee him getting unbanned in the future and he can be a player on the roster. And I think that bringing him on as this analyst that's like pretty a restricted role. He's not traveling with the team. He's not doing a whole lot. I think part of it is testing the waters for, you know, PR. Can you spend some positive PR on a player that was part of like match fixing and throwing and all this other stuff? Can you turn it around? Can you put a positive spin on Swag PR-wise? Because if you can, then when he does get unbanned, you don't have this big PR mess when you stick him on your roster as a player, when all these, like, you know, community voices are like, oh, you know, he's a thrower, he's a match fixer, you know, he shouldn't be playing on a top organization. And this is a way for Cloud9 as an organization to test the waters with Swag, to see how much heat they're going to take PR-wise and see if they can overcome that here and now, you know, before he gets unbanned 6 months from now or 8 months from now or whenever he might get unbanned. And then he can be a player on this team at some point. He's still very young, and he can still definitely come on this team at some point as a player down the line if things don't work out with somebody else on the team as a player. So I think it's like more of a testing the waters thing with PR, as well as just having Swag under contract from this org for later as a player. And a lot of people have already made this comment. I think that's pretty accurate. But maybe he can be an analyst. Maybe he can help him watch demos and point out mistakes. Or maybe from his time playing with like Sean and some of these guys on Complexity, he can be like, this is things that we did on Complexity that were an issue, which is why we were struggling, which is why I wanted to leave the team. So if we can fix these things, then I think you guys will be better. Maybe he can add that perspective. but I just don't think that this dude's really meant to be a coach or something like that. I think this is something else entirely behind the scenes that's kind of going on. Maybe it's just like some sympathy. Maybe they feel bad for the kid because he's like this young dude who was big for NACS, and now he's got like nothing to look forward to unless he gets unbanned and can join a team as far as like his esports career goes. And so this is kind of a way to keep him in the community and to some degree and help him out. And maybe that's part of it too. Maybe not complete sympathy. I think he adds value maybe, especially down the line if he can be a player, but I wonder if it's kind of a bit of that too, like helping somebody out that's in a tough spot with the budget that they have or whatever. Yeah, we'll see. So I think I pretty much covered Cloud9 and the whole Liquid thing. Just to go back to Liquid really quick though, they do need to make a roster change, dude. Like, listen, I understand that Adren's supposed to be their in-game leader now going into Face It this weekend. If that's the case, Daz has no value on this team. Sorry, it's just a cold hard truth. Like, the skill that he has as a fragger is not up to par with everyone else on the team. Maybe he could be a lurker or something because like Fugly's more of a support role, and obviously like Nitro and Elite are more entries and Adren's hopping or whatever. But other than that, I mean, if he's not going to in-game lead for this team, which from what I understand his in-game leading wasn't that great, and Adren and like Liquid's coach D-Mode were trying to coach him up and help him become a better in-game leader because Adren felt that he couldn't be an in-game leader on T-side while he was opping and trying to work picks. He's not in the action with the rest of the team, so he can't help direct traffic as well as he wanted to. And so he felt like if he was going to be the opper, then Daz had to be the in-game leader. He couldn't do both roles appropriately. And so Daz's place was on the team was to be the in-game leader, but they felt he wasn't a very strong one, so they were trying to coach him up to be that. But apparently that whole thing flopped, and now Adren is going to in-game lead anyway at Face It for the most part. Daz will probably have input pre-round and stuff like that, but Adren will, as much as possible, try to direct traffic mid-round and call. From what Adren told me, that's what he's going to try to do. Like, not that he didn't tell me that Daz should be cut from the team or anything crazy like that, but it's pretty obvious that that was probably going to happen if this whole Hiko Skadoodle Dream Team thing was going to happen, that Daz was on the chopping block anyway. That puts him in kind of an awkward spot. I'm sure that the tensions on that team are kind of awkward going into Face It, if I'm honest, since it's pretty much public information that some players were going to get snipped to have Hiko and Skadoodle join up with, you know, Adren, Hiko, and Fugly. Or Adren, Nitro, and Fugly. Yeah, anyway. So yeah, I think they need to make a roster change with Daps 100% at some point down the line. Whether that's bringing in someone like Peter to opt, so Adren can in-game lead. That's an option now since Peter got released from CLG. Whether it's letting Adren op an in-game lead but picking up a strong rifler, since there's not many options in the opping department in NA right now. So maybe CLG's not stable anymore since they dropped Peter. Maybe they can go snag themselves a Cutler, which will fit perfectly on their team with like a dedicated entry fragger like a Liege, but having like Cutler that other entry frag while Nitro can be more of a support with Fugly or something like that. Like Cutler would be a great, smart, consistent fit as a rifler for Liquid if Adren wants to stay as an opper and in-game lead combo. I don't know if that's possible or not. Maybe Cutler's pretty firmly placed in CLG. Maybe CLG has a pretty big plan on what they want to do. They could try to snag Hiko, make, like I think I said, make Tarek a full-time opera or something, but honestly, I think Hiko has a better chance on a team with like Roka, Brush, and Desi and stuff with Elevate. I think that would be a better fit for him than CLG, but who knows? Maybe CLG has a better contract offer, and maybe Hiko does feel he has a better chance to win over there, but in all honesty, the whole Peter thing from CLG doesn't make much sense to me because I honestly think they're weak points like Finesse, in all honesty. I know he's the in-game leader, but honestly, from listening to their comms most times, it's not like he's like the clear-cut leader. A lot of people are chiming in. There doesn't seem to be a set leader. They're very loose in their calling style. And Finesse is the least skilled player on the team for sure. And if he's not going to be the dedicated in-game leader, really directing the team and coming from that point, then what value is he? Yeah, he does help scout teams. He does help like read teams, but he can do that as like a coach or something like that, in my opinion, not in game with you. But whatever, you know. I know Peter had some consistency issues or whatever. Yeah, he had some big games at Aspen, but he's also had some tough times as well. So maybe that's kind of what they're thinking about there. So talked about that as well. That basically leaves the whole thing with pyth joining, or I don't know how to say his name, if it's just like Pyth or pyth. I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. But he joined Luminosity Gaming. First off, I don't really know much about him as a player other than that he's been like on some Swedish teams like below Nip and Fnatic and such, and he's challenged some of those teams on LAN at times with different lineups. And I know he used to play with Pronax, and Pronax used to claim he was a great player, but just unlucky in all these ventures with teams that ended shortly and him getting cut from different teams. It was like, you know, just unlucky or whatever. He was really a good player, but just got, you know, unlucky or what have you. So I know most recently he was on Orbit, you know, playing at Gfinity with them and stuff like that. That team kind of disbanded or whatever, and so he was like a free agent. For Luminosity, this makes perfect sense because it's not like they can get any top NA talent because all those guys are sealed up in like CLG or Liquid or Cloud9 or whatever else. So it's not like they can like jack players. They don't look very attractive to some top player teams because of their weak performances at ESEA and CEVOland. So it's not like they're like an attractive offer to some of these top NA talents. So I feel like they probably made their best bet by trying to steal some EU talent since they can't really get much in NA. So they get pyth, who is probably one of the more skilled players they could have gotten that were available, I guess. But still kind of out of nowhere. No one really expected a Tier 2 NA team to get an EU player. Yeah, we've seen this happen before with Lurpus joining EG in 1.6 and Zep joining Complexity back in the day as well and things like that. But that was a EU player joining like a top NA team. This is an EU player joining a Tier 2 NA team. So it's a little bit different. But yeah, I think that like Luminosity, they got a good deal here about getting pyth. Pyth, I think it's weird for him to join this, but actually I was talking to Adren and Amir Kyer, who used to play for Frag Machines in CSS and CSGO, and he came up with a good thought that like maybe pyth felt this was his best way to be part of a big league. You know, obviously this big $1 million league announcement from ESL and ESEA and $500,000 seasons, 2 seasons for the rest of this year of 2015. That's a lot of money, and I guess maybe pyth or pyth, however you say it, felt that this was his best chance to compete in this league because I don't think he was going to be able to join any of those top EU teams that are invited to this league. So maybe this is his opportunity to slip in and compete in that tournament from the other side, the side he had a better chance of actually getting on a team on, which was the NA scene. So there's that. Maybe he felt was his best chance to compete in a big league was by joining an NA team. Does this really fix or help Luminosity? I don't really think so. I mean, yeah, pyth's probably going to be a good player, a high-skilled player, rifler for them, and he can opt to or whatever, but it's not like he can just carry this team by himself. He's not that good to just carry Luminosity by himself and like lead them to like a championship or something like that. Like, there's no way. Yes, he will add something to this team. Yes, he is probably going to be a good player, but there's so many more problems with Luminosity between like Anger not performing well on LAN recently. Yeah, he's done it in the past with Complexity and I by Power, especially in some different ESEA lands with those 2 different squads. Yes, he has crazy online stats. Yes, he can be a very good player, but it just seems like lately on LAN, between the last 2 ESEA events he's been to, with like Luminosity most recently and Denial before that, and then Luminosity at CEVOland. So like basically since the end of 2014 to today on LAN, at like against actual competition, not some like local crap at Fragdelphia, but like big lands against like top NA talent and like international teams, he's just not performing right now, and he needs to figure that out. Whether it's a mental block or whatever it is, gotta get Anger playing right on LAN to help pyth basically as like another star player or impact player on the team. You could say the same thing about Flam. His LAN performances at the last ESEA and TiVo weren't the best either. You need him opping well for you if he's going to be your dedicated opper on LAN. Not to say that these guys cheat or online or whatever. No, I'm not saying that. Maybe they just need some more time and experience to develop. Anger should have no excuse. He's been playing forever. He just has like a mental block or something going on that needs to be fixed, I think. Or maybe he's just not in the right roles or something. They need to figure that out. I don't know. But when it comes to Flam, I think he just needs more experience on LAN as an opper. Maybe that'll help him. Maybe it won't. We'll see what happens, right? But I just don't think pyth's going to be the hero that saves Luminosity and brings him to LAN and carries him to victory. They have other problems they need to fix for sure. Obviously, their in-game leader thing is kind of in shambles right now, too, with Arya just being on the team such a short time. And whether or not that was a smart move is still debatable. So I think that pretty much sums up everything. I did briefly already mention that CLG dropped Peter, but we don't know what's going to happen with CLG or with Peter yet. Maybe something I'm going to announce right before I publish this video, and then I'm going to publish this on YouTube and something happens, and I'm, you know, losing the race. But we'll just go with this for now. Thanks.